What's going on, guys? Andrew here, Jordan here.
Hey,
another
man.
Pianote live lesson.
Yeah.
Probably things look a little bit different.
A little bit. Yeah, I bet
Right?
they do. Yeah.
Yeah.
They look different for us, don't they?
A little bit different, yeah.
Yeah.
So we're in a new studio.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in case you didn't know, we are going to be learning about how to grow a cool mustache today.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a surprise lesson. You thought this was on Harry Styles, but no, on
It's on the mustache.
yeah, it's on the stash.
But no, it's on a Harry Styles song, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Sign of the Times, which is, I don't know, like it's blowing up the charts, I feel like.
Yeah.
I've never actually used that phrase before, like in a real sentence, but I think this one is actually blowing up the charts. This is like a really new kind of piano ballad that came out, I think, over the summer here.
And it's cool to see some real music charting too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
especially coming from a One Direction guy.
Yeah, Harry Styles, he's like a One Direction alumni, I guess you
I guess
maybe
you would call him an alumni.
Yeah.
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 So it's cool to see music coming out of them that's like this cool.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, and it's a great song. It's a really simple piano song, so I think it's good for anyone who's sort of a beginner that is just wanting to kind of learn something nice and simple. Something that kind of gets your left hand working nice and rhythmically, and there's some kind of cool melody elements. There's also one part that I played at the intro here. One sort of tricky part with these octaves, with these moving octaves. So we'll get to that because that's a really great just exercise for building accuracy.
Yeah.
So diving right in, this song is super simple. There's really only two parts. There's sort of one final part of the song that I'll go over really briefly at the end. That's kind of like this big climactic thing where the chords just swap up a little bit. But the bulk of the song consists of only 3 chords, and they're all played as just straight quarter notes. So your left hand kind of becomes this steady pulse moving through it all.
Right.
And those 3 chords, the song's in the key of F, so that means the only note that we have to bear in mind that is going to be a black key is B flat. So here's our F chord, and B flat's right there. Everything else is white keys, so it's a pretty simple key to dive into as a new player. And the 3 chords that the bulk of the song is going to be using are the F major triad, the D minor triad, which is the relative minor of F, so D minor, that's D, F, and A, and then just one kind of neighboring chord down, just the C triad. So just the very first 4 bars of the song here are just F, 2, 3, 4, and then D minor, 2, 3, 4, and then 2 bars of C. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And so it's all that rhythmic pulse.
Okay.
Yeah, so really simple. Before we go any further, because we want to go nice and slow here, we're going to bust up that click track. Let's just go right at performance speed because this is a pretty simple, it's a slower song here. Mm-hmm. So we're at 70 BPM here in the studio. So set your tempo somewhere around that point. If you got to dial it back, feel free to do that. The actual sort of performance tempo of the song is around 70 BPM, so that's what we'll be working with here.
Definitely. And for those of you guys who are members, just remember you can submit questions for us to answer.
Yes.
A little bit later.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, ready?
Okay. 1, 2, 3, here we go. I'll do it one more time. Back to F. Yeah. So that's super simple, and you may have even noticed that I wasn't even doing any chord inversions at all. This song doesn't even do that. Wow. It's all the chords are just in their straight root positions.
Yeah.
So, for some people that have, tuned into a couple of these lessons, I've always talked about the importance of chord inversions, and they are super important, and I do think they're a fundamental skill. Maybe once you learn this song, you might want to try to go back and mess around with some chord inversions with these chords and see if you can change the sound of it. That's kind of up to you. But Mr. Harry Styles just plays it in straight root position, which is always sweet. And it's also a good opportunity to build that accuracy because our basic shape of the chord is just this kind of claw thing here. So we got our are 1, 3, and 5, and that's going to be how we form each of these chords. But obviously, just the jump between the F chord to the D minor chord, that's something that if you're just learning to play piano, you're kind of still building that spatial awareness of the keyboard. So sometimes it's a good exercise just to pop back and forth between, basic root triads.
Now, if it was an inversion, it maybe would be a smaller movement?
It would be a smaller movement.
Okay.
For instance, if you did want to do an inversion between your F chord and your D minor, all you'd have to do is take your thumb note, so take that C note and move it up to D. So there's your inversion, and here's your root position. Right? Different sound.
Very different sound.
And different feel.
Yeah.
So it's important to have an appreciation and a sort of contrast between the two of them. All right, so the right hand is also really simple. This is one of those songs that, it's a total like vocal song. Like there's kind of this sort of simple piano accompaniment, and then there's this, like he's up pretty high. It's actually like I've got the notation here that you can download below, and that's our F note that we're kind of basing our melody of is an octave above that sort of middle C range, and that's where he's singing. So he's up in that kind of falsetto
Right
range
up there.
Yeah. So here's the melody, and again, we're just going to be using that steady pulse chord progression underneath. So here's the 4 bars with that melody. I'll do it one more time. So yeah, let's try that. Let's dial that right back to, let's do it at 50 BPM. I know it's going to be really slow, but there's some rhythmic kind of nuances with this song in the right hand that I think are important to get locked in. And at home, if you want to just practice this melody just along to the click hand, or pardon me, along to the click track, just right hand, go ahead. But bear in mind that this is the kind of song where you can really build that skill just using your left hand as a steady pulse. Right. You're just straight quarter notes with the click there. Ooh, nice. 1 and 2 and 3, here we go. So when I'm thinking of a melody as simple as that, I sort of break it up into 2 separate portions. There's the melody that runs over the F chord and the D minor chord, because we have only 1 bar of each. We got 1 bar of the F chord, 1 bar of the D minor chord, and then we got 2 full bars of the C chord. So that's kind of a good opportunity to split things up into 2 separate sections. So the first section, we're on that F note up here. So we're at F, and then we pop up to G, and then E, and then down to D there. So we kind of use that E note as like it's like a little passing note, or I don't know exactly what you might call it, but it sort of adds this sort of tension and helps to lead your ear down to the next chord.
It is kind of a leading tone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like this. And that might be something that's worth just kind of working on back and forth, because that E note doesn't actually land, it lands just before you swap to the D chord. Right. So again, it kind of helps slide you down into that D chord. And then moving into the next chord, so now we're going down to that C. And in the C chord, we're just doing this. It's almost like just like a little major third exercise. So it's going from E, E, D, E, D, E, D, C, C. And then it just repeats that. So here's the whole thing. All right. So the next section is that tricky octave section that I was talking about. So it goes like this. I'll play it just at full speed here, and then we're going to go really slow because this is a big opportunity to build that sense of accuracy on the keyboard. So here's that section. So that's tough. So let's go really slow at 50 BPM, and then we'll play this, and then I'll give you kind of my tips on how I work with octaves, because it's something where it's not about your fingers, it's about your arm movement with this.
Okay.
Yeah. Bit of a
Makes
different
sense.
mindset. Yeah. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's tough because a lot of times you have two notes that you got to be getting each time. Like they're sort of harmony notes. So you've got your thumb and sort of pinky in on the action here. And there's a few things that a piano player might have problems with if you're just starting out in terms of like what bad notes that you might play. And those are, a lot of times if you're just starting out, your middle three fingers might accidentally, flub a note or whatever. So you want to make sure that those are out of there. But probably most commonly, you'll have a situation where you've got your pinky finger kind of almost like lying just slightly over the seventh note. So you can see here, like I'm playing my C note, but if I let go of my tension a little bit in my hand, I'll plop down onto the B note, and then you get that sort of situation. Yeah. So that's where technique comes into play, and this is something that definitely takes some time to get used to because it feels weird. It feels really weird. This is where stretching like this is really important because you want to build as much hand sort of span as possible, and it's also something where even just sort of pedaling one note or walking up a scale or something in those octaves will help get you familiar with what the space is between one note and its octave note.
Right.
Yeah, because it's always going to be the same space.
Okay. Yeah.
So, so if we apply all that and look at the actual melody of the song here, you can see that it's almost like this major triad jumping kind of thing, because we're going from the C, jumping down to the A, and then back up. So that's the melody. So it's C, A, G, G. Oh, pardon me. Yeah, so it's C, A, G, G. Do, 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 do. So it sort of walks up the third from F to A at the end there. But it's just such a weird thing to get used to.
Right.
Because as players, I think a lot of the time the idea of like a melody is it's this sort of scale thing.
Yeah.
We've kind of talked about this before, the difference between like chord melodies and
For sure.
scale melodies.
Yeah.
And this is definitely like a chord style movement here.
Mm-hmm.
So what I would recommend you to do, let's just go back to the 50, and I'm not even going to play the left hand because getting that left hand in sync when you're also trying to just work on accuracy is probably too much to like start off with.
Yeah.
So let's just go with 50, and I'm just going to do that melody really, really slow, and yeah.
Cool.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then again. So yeah, just make sure, always remember that you're supposed to be playing kind of on the ball tip of your hands, and that even applies when you're using such like a larger kind of octave span. Even though it feels really weird, your instinct might be just like, oh, I wanted to stretch as much as possible and kind of get yourself like spread out, you know. But don't do that. Because then you run the risk of like hitting every other, you know, you can kind of just go full palm and just smash yourself all into that. Bad news. So yeah, that's that section. That's probably the toughest section of the song. The next part of the song is actually, it goes back to that main melody. And now we're sort of just working with, we have some triads instead of just a single note. So this is really simple. Just remember how we went back to that. So here's what you do in the second kind of verse, so to speak. So instead of just playing a regular F as your melody, you're playing like an F triad. So you're kind of using your bottom two notes, your A and your C, and then your F is still your melody note, but you're, just to kind of flesh out the chord, you're going, and then we have this sweet chord here. So that's jumping from our F triad in first inversion, because here's our F in root position, and here's F in first inversion, and now we're jumping down. So we have, this is almost like a, if you want to get technical, it's almost like a D with like an add 9 or something on top of it, because of that E note that sort of sits on top. And then this is a C chord. So let's go really slow with that again.
Sure.
And again, this is the kind of motion where you're sort of thinking in terms of your thumb and your pinky. They're like working really close together with these kinds of things, because you're going, like that's almost the sort of motion. It's like this kind of where your thumb, pinky, and your pointer finger are sort of, they're kind of bouncing back and forth on each other.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. octave sort of section there. So honestly, like the song is so simple. That's basically the two parts of it. There's the straight melody that's sort of isolated with just a single note up high. There's that part, and then there's the sort of souped up version of the melody, I guess you could say, which is when you add that melody note and you also join it along with two other notes below that sort of make up your chord.
Right.
So, like a mentality that I always use as like a shorthand for, say I don't want to like read, I don't want to be like counting up the dots on the sheet music or something. You can maybe see I've got all this sheet music here. But I'm not even really reading it because I know that the actual chord of the song is going to be it's going to be an F, a D minor, and a C.
Yeah.
And when it jumps into this part where you've got those extra harmony notes, I know that because the song, because you have enough familiarity with your ear training and stuff, you know that you're still working with those three chords. So you know those harmony notes are going to be, you have like a 99% accuracy rate that those harmony notes are going to be just the other two notes of your triad, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm sure that's got to be a pretty similar kind of technique with guitar.
For sure.
Yeah. I think it's just something that all musicians, you kind of learn the like shortcuts for your instrument, I guess.
Oh yeah.
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 Yeah. So that's sort of the two parts of the song. There is one other section that actually uses that. It actually goes up to a B flat major chord.
Okay.
So that's just one other element at the end when the song really sort of starts to soup up. So that part is just this. I'm going to go from that octave section. So that's basically the song.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And because it's such a simple song, and because, I'm all about personalizing them, the only other stuff that I kind of wanted to talk about in this lesson was maybe just some opportunities to make things a little more filled out.
Okay.
And add some extra kind of fluff or extra sprinkle or whatever you want to call it. Just an extra element of personalization to this song that you could use. So just going back to the very top when I mentioned that everything is in quarter notes, right? Yeah. You can do something as simple as make it eighth notes. That's even just a good rhythmic exercise.
Yeah.
The other thing is if you wanted to just go down to straight octaves, like down to the bass or something.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just stuff as simple as that, where it's like playing with the range of your instrument. The piano is we're so lucky as piano players, because we have we got 88 keys. That's like an unprecedented amount of octaves in relation to other instruments. Like how many octaves does a guitar have?
I don't quote me, but it's
Yeah.
probably half that. I mean, it's not a lot.
Yeah.
So it's very cool because when you do those small changes, it changes the whole dynamic and feel of the song.
totally.
Obviously still very recognizable, but like
Yeah.
when you change to eighth notes from those quarter notes,
Yeah.
all of a sudden it kind of had a bit of more of a pulsing feel.
Exactly.
It's very cool.
Yeah, because the song itself it's kind of got this slow plodding like character
Yeah.
to it,
Yeah.
and I really like it. It's really cool, but sometimes it's just fun to be like, what would this sound like if it was a, you know? That's hard. The other thing that I like to do sometimes with a simple song like this is even just as simple as like, okay, so you've played it in this kind of mid-range where you usually hear a piano song,
Yeah.
but you can maybe do like maybe like if you're making your own version up, you know, bring it up high and do like a. You know,
Very cool.
yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, I like that, right? So it's like, it's almost like a different instrument up high.
It is.
Yeah. It
And
sounds,
you were doing something moving with the left hand too?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was my final point that I wanted to bring up about personalizing a song like this is, if you're feeling comfortable, if you want to challenge yourself, don't just stick with the solid chords. Make them, you know, do some like broken chord movement and sort of make some arpeggios happen.
Yeah.
That's all stuff to do once you're kind of in this place where you're no longer like learning the basics of the song, but you're now like in this place where it's like, okay, how do I get more expressive with it?
Yeah.
And that's when it gets really fun. Like, I don't know, like when you learn a song, what's your approach? Do you go through it and do you try to like is your first instinct to get it as right as possible, right in quotation marks?
Yeah, that's actually a great question, and I think
Yeah.
it's different for every musician because everybody has like different goals
Yeah.
and things that they want to do.
Yeah.
As someone who primarily is like a songwriter with my guitar playing,
Yeah.
no.
Right.
I don't look at any of the tabs or sheet music for anything. I'll
Yeah.
listen to it a couple times and then immediately try and appropriate it into something that sounds more like me.
Right.
Because I want to inject my own personality into
Yeah.
it, which isn't what everyone wants to do, but
Yeah.
it's cool because even this really simple version that you started with, which is very much like the recording, there's subtle differences that sound like you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, exactly. And I think that's something that a musician, you know, learns to identify in themselves when they see a piece of music and when they hear like a basic recording of something. You kind of begin to get a sense of like, oh, it's almost like you have like this main trail that the studio recording is, but then you see these like other trails, and it's like, oh, I wonder what happens if I go that way with it, or I wonder if I like go this way. Maybe like, you know, I take it up into this weird like high ices or kind of place or something. There's all this sort of alternate routes that you can start to take. And for anybody, the way I like to learn and cover songs is I do like to take a good hard look at the source material, but with the objective of like, okay, I'm going to do one or two passes through the main trail here, and then I'm going to start bushwhacking and kind of go all through and you know explore the whole jungle.
Yeah, and maybe that's a good point because then at least you know you're going to end up in the same place. If you do take some of those weird paths, you kind of have a solid foundational framework.
Yeah, exactly.
Very cool.
Right, the last thing.
The last thing.
Yeah, that I want to talk about was because this song has such a simple melody. It's also an opportunity to really get creative with your dynamics and something that I haven't really talked that much about in lessons so far, which is. It's almost like as close as a piano can get to bending notes. I know you can bend notes all the time.
Oh,
It's nothing for you guys.
Yeah, it's a great thing about guitar.
Yeah, but we don't have that luxury. But what we can do, especially in a key with all of these white notes, is we have these, you know, these beautiful moments to kind of take, say that moment that's in that C chord there. You can play it nice and simple with just hitting every key kind of in isolation with each other. Or you can do what I like to do sometimes if I want to emulate like a vocalist or something and get a bit more expressive. And that's almost like blur the notes together. So if I have this E note, can kind of like slip my finger off the E flat and just kind of like grace note it up. So it's like this. Or like sort of really quickly bounce back between the D and C. You know the difference there versus.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's just something like whenever I'm like doing a song like this, I'm always looking for opportunities to kind of like just do these little moments that sort of blur what note is actually the original note.
And something, I don't know if you notice you're doing this, but you're lagging or pushing parts of the rhythm
Right.
of that portion as well to kind
Yeah.
of continue to add feel when
Exactly.
you do it.
Yeah.
It sounds really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that.
Well, it's something, you know, rhythm is another creative element that anyone can use, right? It's you know, sometimes when you get stuck in these, you know, we're practicing everything to a click track and stuff, and that's really just where rhythm begins.
Right.
You know, just like every other, just like chords, melody, dynamics, and louds and softs and stuff. Rhythm's just another thing that you can use as a tool to, you know, kind of bend the rules a bit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, should we move on to questions?
Yeah, let's check some questions
Okay, we do have one in here.
Okay.
This is from Caleb.
Hey, Caleb.
Do you have any tips for transitioning between the main melodies? Once I've learned the specific melody parts individually, I tend to struggle when transitioning between them and putting them all together, especially when they involve more claw-style chords.
Claw style, yeah. Well, let's see here. Yeah, so this is actually, you're actually lucky with this song because you, your first melody there, before you get to that claw style stuff, is actually, it ends on C. So, and then the next claw style melody starts on C there. So,
Okay.
So, so you're kind of set up. You can, like, just look at what I do with my fingering here. And now I switch my fingering down, so I'm playing my final part of the melody is just with notes 1, 2, and 3. And that, now I'm at that claw melody part, and now all I have to do to get ready for it is, you know, just keep my thumb there, because my thumb's where it needs to be, and just move my hand up to get ready for the claw section. So I just move my pinky up to get to that section. So I don't know, like honestly, that's a specific example for swapping melodies for this song. Mm-hmm. But the mindset that I kind of like to get in as a player is I'm only comfortable with a melody and with each section of the melody when I get to a place where I'm able to kind of like I know what the next 2 or 3 bars are in the song.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? So it's like, that's not to say that I'm necessarily like consciously thinking about those 2 or 3 bars, but it's like I know I've practiced it enough that it's like I've got the whole phrase or something kind of in the back of my head.
Yeah.
So you're always kind of ready for the next section or whatever. Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like when we're speaking to one another, we're not thinking about each word when we put together a sentence before we start it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we're like going word by word, it's just gonna go off into some weird places probably.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
I did have a question, and this is just from me. Now, I might be putting you on the spot a little bit, but with a song like this, it's great because it uses all diatonic chords, all the notes exist naturally within the scale, so it's great for, even though there's some challenging rhythm parts, a little bit, it's a good song to kind of start with for people getting into piano as well, parts of it.
Yeah.
Are there other songs that are similar, kind of in this vein, that they could look at as well, students who maybe want to try more songs like this?
Yeah, let me think here. I mean, well, I mean, it's a little early to be talking about this. I hesitate to even say this aloud, but Christmas carols are great.
Yeah.
Yeah, Christmas carols are great early songs to learn.
Okay.
Because again, you're working in that sort of diatonic framework.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're able to just kind of, because the melody is so iconic with I don't know, say like, forgive me. Because the melody is so like everyone knows it,
Yeah.
you can kind of take the liberties that you need to take with your left hand. This song, the Sign of the Times here, is it's about as stripped back a left hand as you can get. You could probably, if you wanted to go even easier, you could just do straight whole notes in your left hand. But the quarter notes are cool because they give you that rhythm. So to me, it's like specific examples. I don't really know any offhand here, but my attitude towards a beginner player trying to learn any song is just think about the melody, and when you get to a place where you want to get your left hand in on the action, just do like quarter notes at most for your left hand.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And one other thing I'll mention, and I believe I had this conversation, it might not have been with you, but it was with one of our main guitar instructors, which was that top 40 music and a lot of the pop music, the chord progressions oftentimes will be the same for the intro, the verse, the chorus, which is similar to what this is. I know there's one change kind of towards the end, but it's great for somebody who's maybe a little bit newer. You're only really learning, I mean, there were 3 chords there, right?
Yeah.
You just need the transition between those, and then you're almost all the way through the song already.
Totally.
So you can look there too, and obviously that's not the case for all top 40 songs or that style, but in pop music that seems to be pretty prevalent.
Yeah, yeah. Like again, like this song is actually kind of one thing I do like about this song actually is it's a little bit of a unique progression. At least in relation to other top 40 songs.
It is.
It goes away from that 1-4-5 thing, and now we've got that 1 minor 6 5 thing.
And when the thing that I find interesting about sitting on that 5 chord for whatever it is, like twice the amount of time as the other chords, naturally you wouldn't really want to go there when you're walking down. It wants to go somewhere. It wants to go down to the 4, or I feel like the 5 would want to go back up to the 6, right?
Yeah.
So it's definitely unique.
It's got a cool vibe, this one.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's it for questions. Is there anything else you wanted to cover in regards to this song?
No, not really. Just what I would honestly, other than just practicing this song, the takeaway that I would recommend for you as far as building your piano ability is to work on that claw section. I just call it the claw section because I feel like I got this claw whenever I'm doing it. So those octaves, that's just a great thing, and you can either practice that specific melody, or sometimes it's just a good exercise just to be like, I want to take this claw shape, and I want to go, I went F, and I want to go from F to E, and I want to go from E to B, and I want to go, just kind of like pick a next landing point, and your objective is obviously to do it cleanly. You don't want to be flubbing notes or playing these accidental extra, keys as well.
And the more you do that, obviously you'll build up more muscle memory and you won't have to think as much about being as accurate, right?
Yeah.
It'll just naturally occur.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Okay, well, do you want to maybe close us out on a full performance of that song?
Yeah, we'll do this full song here.
Okay.
All right, thanks everybody.
Thanks, guys.